Hey Freedom Middle. Today we're going to be talking about the people who influenced the Founding Fathers. Now when we talk about the Founding Fathers, those are the people who helped start the United States and start its government. So people like, maybe like an Alexander Hamilton. I think you've heard of him. How about James Madison over here, right? Just looking so cool, feeling like he could just write a constitution. We got George Washington up here, first president. Also a pretty important guy, Thomas Jefferson, right? Wrote the Declaration of Independence. And we got John Adams over here, a second president. All these people would be considering founding fathers. But you're like, oh, wait a second. Wait, where's Thomas Paine at? Don't worry, he'll be here, Because what we're going to learn about today is not so much the founding fathers, but the people who inspired them, who gave them ideas for American freedom and American independence and an American government of our own. So let's get into that, all right? So you should have a worksheet that looks something like this. It's going to be about those three people, John Locke, Montesquieu, and oh look, there it is, our boy T-Pain. All right, so we're going to be learning about these three people, what they all had in common, and how they influenced our founding fathers. All right, so when you see this icon, it's going to say ideas. That's what the I stand for. I is for ideas. So you're going to write that in the ideas section of your paper. All right, here we go. So what do we mean by influence? I think we talked about this just the other day, but influence means the people who inspire you, right? The people who change the way you think, who help you form who you are and give you ideas. So that's what we're going to be talking about today. Basically, who did the founding fathers look to? Who are their heroes? Who did they learn from? All right, so we are going to look at three very important people, John Locke and Baron de Montesquieu, and our boy T-Pain. Here we go. All right, so we're going to go way back in time, all the way from 2014, where you have this super cool technology, right, back to the olden times. And in the olden times, there was something going on called the Enlightenment. All right, the Enlightenment, which you'll want to write at the top of your worksheet, just along the top, you'll need to know this vocab word. Enlightenment was a time in history when people started to believe in the power of reason could be used to make a better government and a better world. They believed that using their minds, they could think up a better way than things were working, right? Instead of just having kings take over and treat people badly, they're like, no, we can come up with a better government, right? And we can have a better world, a world where people are at peace and where they're treated equally and they have rights. That's the start of stuff they started to think up of. All right. Now, the Enlightenment was kind of a really big thing that spread all over Europe. All right, and involved science, it involved government, it involved a lot of people thinking about different things. So like over here in Poland, we had Copernicus, right, studying space. Same thing with Galileo. You probably learned about both these dudes in science, right? They're making big conclusions, figuring out, you know what, that whole thing about like Earth being flat and us being the center of the universe, like maybe not so much, maybe not so true. All right, we got our boy Newton over here, right? Isaac Newton. He's looking at some trees, watching apples fall and stuff, and he's like, yo, there's gravity. When things fall, it falls to the ground, and that's like a force that pulls us down, and so we don't fly off into space. And then we had Voltaire, and we'll talk about Voltaire later, maybe when you're in high school, because he was a trippy dude. All right, we're going to move on. All right, so what? Okay, so during this time, government and science were ruled by religion. All right, in a lot of ways. The government and the church kind of worked together, and so whatever they said was how it was, all right? And so here, for example, is Galileo. He's trying to explain to the church, he's like, yo, we go around the sun, not the other way around. And people are looking at him like he's crazy, but that's the way it was. All right, so here we go. We're going to start off with our first guy, John Locke. Now, he was born in England all the way back in 1632. Now, right now, you still don't have to write anything this down, right? Remember, be looking for the I symbol. This is just a little background, a little of his story. He went to college and became a doctor. Pretty smart dude. But that wasn't enough for him. Besides being a doctor, he got into government. He became the assistant to a really, really powerful man in government, and that's where he got to see how government really worked. And as he looked at it, he was like, yo, this is messed up. We're kind of treating people really badly. We should do something about this. So he had a bunch of ideas that challenged the king's authority. They thought that the king should have less power. And he was a brave dude, so he put that in writing for people to read. And the king was like, what? You did that? And he's like, yeah, I just did that. All right, so he believed, this guy John Locke, he believed that all people were born equal. It wasn't like there were some people down here and then the king up here. He's saying, no, all people are born equal, and so no one is above the law. This is the law right here. It's not like, oh, you have to obey the law and I'm the king up here. He's saying, no, all of us have to obey this law. All right, so these weren't necessarily new ideas, but the way he spelled them out, the way he explained them, helped form our modern democracy. Okay, so in one of his writings, he states his theory of natural rights, which are life, liberty, and property. Sounds a little familiar, right? It isn't quite what you might have heard before, but those words sound a little similar, right? At least they're life and liberty. But he's saying that all people, they have a right to life, to not be killed. They have a right to liberty, right, to have some freedom in their choices. And they have a right to their own property, right, to own their own things. That people can't just come in and take things from you, right? If it's yours, you should be able to protect that. And he felt that the laws of the country should be based on these natural rights, okay? And if they weren't followed, then people had the right to rebel, to go against their government. And so that's going to be important when we learn about America, right? Because they're saying, hey, the king is taking away our life, he's taking away our liberty, and he's taking away our property. So we can go after him and attack him. So these things in yellow, since they've got the eye there indicating that that's an idea, you want to put those in his ideas. All right, so if you look at your worksheet so far, here's his ideas, right? No one is above the law. Everyone has natural rights, life, liberty, and property. And the laws should be based on these rights. Now here's our connection, all right? The Founding Fathers used his ideas to base our laws, right? And life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness is even in the Declaration of Independence, okay? And because he said that we can revolt when the king disobeys and takes away our rights, that was a big part of the United States, disobeying the king and revolting against the king. All right, Montesquieu. All right, this dude was born in a castle. This is his castle. He was a rich dude, okay? Now, he was part of the French government, he was a lawyer, and he wrote a book called The Persian Letters that basically was just him hating on the French government, just hating, saying this is messed up, the way we're treating the people. All right, so he came up with the idea, instead of one person having all the power and being able to treat the people badly, he said we should separate power in government, and that power should be divided into 3 parts. Okay, and each that way they can check up on each other. So one part of government could stop the other part of government from treating people badly, right? Because no one has too much power. So let's take a look. Montesquieu's ideas. He formed the idea of separation of power in government, and he thought the government should be divided into 3 parts, and each one check on each other. All right, so here's our connection. Our government used this idea, and because of that, we now have the legislative, executive, and judicial branches. All right, we're going to jump ahead, all right, from Montesquieu and Locke up to 1776, which you should know is kind of a big deal, kind of an important year. And in that year, Thomas Paine, T. Paine, was writing a book called Common Sense. All right, so here, who is this T. Paine guy? All right, he was poorly educated. He was unsuccessful at most of his jobs. He just kept getting fired. He just failed. But he moved to Philadelphia, all right, from Great Britain. So he was born in Great Britain, but he ended up totally on Team America. Here's what he did, all right? He, unlike Locke and Montesquieu, wasn't a philosopher, wasn't some smarty pants, wasn't some rich guy. Instead, he was just an ordinary dude, and he wrote an ordinary book for ordinary people. Common Sense, was just 47 pages long, but it pretty simply said, hey, we've got to break away from Great Britain. We've got to make our own country. And guess what? It sold 500,000 copies at a time when there was only about 3 million people living in the colonies in America. So basically, everyone either had a copy of this or borrowed it from someone else or had someone read it to them. Everyone in America got their hands on this book and read about his ideas. All right, and so it was written in a style for common people to understand. And here's what he said in it. He said, Britain, you say you're our mother country, right? But here's the thing. You're treating us so badly, no mother would ever hurt her kids so badly. He was dissing the king, calling him a royal brute, all right? And he said this big continent of America could not be controlled by one tiny little island of England. All right, and he said because England kept getting itself into wars, America was dragged into wars, and that was unnecessary for us to be fighting. He said we were too far, all right, for the colonies to send a petition to ask England for some help. It could take a year before that was sent on a boat to England. England talked about it and then sent us a response. He's like, that's messed up. So he said we need to break free. And he even came up with a plan of government for when after we do break free. All right. The plan didn't actually end up being what we used because it's kind of crazy complicated, but he gave it a good shot. All right, so here we got Thomas Paine. He wrote Common Sense, made a powerful argument for America to break away from Great Britain, and it was easy to understand, so everybody read it. And he had a plan for U.S. government. So because it was so simple to read, everyone in America read it and inspired Americans to revolt against the British government. All right. So we learned about these three people, Locke, Montesquieu, and T-Pain. So what you're going to do, look at what your notes, reflect on them, review them, and then think about what did these people have in common? It says here name three. Give me at least two. All right, try to think of at least two. If you can think of a third one, awesome. Think about what did these people have in common. That's your flipped classroom for today. See you sometime soon with more wonderful civics learning.